Hey gang, welcome back to Jade's Garage. Today's video, I'm going to be doing some more work on the 68 Mustang known as Jade. If you followed along, you know that there's well over 100 videos on this car. Complete rebuild of this thing, all the way to paint. And I have one small problem that I want to deal with, and that is the radiator and getting hot and overheating. This is a common problem with these cars, and I'm going to approach it maybe a little bit differently than some people might. But I think this should solve the problem. So let me show you what I'm going to do. So as I said, what I'm dealing with is the car getting hot and overheating. Now, this is an original V8 car, automatic with factory air conditioning. And I've converted it to vintage air. There's videos on that process. But you can see it's got the new AC condenser up front, new components everywhere. And from what I understand, this is the original radiator for this car. It is very wide and very thick. But one problem you run into, and I will point out, I may be causing part of my own problems here because I don't have a shroud on the radiator. But I'm going to go a different route anyway. Part of the problem with these radiators, or this design, is your water inlet is on the upper passenger side and your outlet is on the lower passenger side. And in effect, what that means is you have a short pattern for this radiator to dissipate heat, because it only has to go over to this, maybe to the center, come back down and go back out. Some of that heat will continue to transfer over to the other side, but really nothing is going to help that thing flow all the way through these cores. So I'm going to pull this radiator out and I'm going to do a different approach. I know that up to 65 to 68 and I think 69, maybe early 69, I don't remember for sure, these inlets were on the passenger side, both of these inlets. Later model cars, they had the lower inlet on the driver's side. So in effect, you end up forcing the water or antifreeze to go all the way across to come out that side. To do this, I'm going to do a couple different things. One, I'm going to be using an aluminum radiator that was provided to me by Alloy Works. I have not opened that box yet, but I'm going to show you what's inside that box. I'm also converting to a 70 model water pump. I picked this up off of Amazon, and the difference, of course, is the outlet, instead of being on the passenger side, it's now on the driver's side lower. So I'm going to have to get a different radiator hose and take care of that. One more thing. This cooling system has dual electric fans on it and a shroud, and I'll show you all that. So it's going to have a place to mount a sensor, because that has to trigger the fans to kick on. So I have the factory sensor, or factory location, let's say, behind, I say factory, I have a temperature sensor behind the distributor that reads on the temperature gauge. I have noted that there's another outlet or port right there below the coil that could be used, but I may try something different, and I have that in the box. And basically this is an outlet that has a fitting or a port on top of the water neck. So really, if I mounted this in the same location, I'd have easy access to this port. And we'll see how that works. One more thing I want to do is I'm going to start the car, let it get warm, hot, whatever, and I'm going to take digital readings with my temperature sensor and read different locations on the radiator so we can see just how much heat is being transferred around. So let's take a quick look at the water pump. Comes with a gasket, that's a good sign. And as you can see, well, it looks pretty well made. I like the finish of that. And this was, I think, about $54 on Amazon. So, and you can see the neck is facing down to the driver's side. Okay, if I want to do this, I'm going to open up this box, have a look inside. Out of the way. Of course, it has the ports down here for your automatic transmission hookups. As I said, dual electric fans, shroud. The shroud even has louvers in it to help transfer air. See this cap. Looks like a pretty cool cap, standard size. Now I don't know what the pressure rating is on this. Have not researched that just yet. It has an overflow. I'm at the top of the screen here. And then look at the other side. Cool. Now this might take a little more work. I don't know yet. I'm really hoping that I can use the standard size or standard type of mounts, you know, at the top where it has the over brackets. So hopefully all this works out. We're going to find out though, one way or another. One more thing I forgot to open. This envelope that's in the box. Water temperature sensor. Some wire connectors. Some more wire connectors. And a relay. Built-in fuse, that's a plus. Made. Okay. So that's not that big. Cool. So of course I'm sure, well, I say I'm sure, I don't see any wiring instructions. That could be interesting, but I would say that's a ground. I guess we'll figure it out moving forward. Now, just a quick observation, these wires are blue and black, so obviously a ground and a power. So there's a blue and there's a black, red and white. So maybe there's some instructions I'm missing. I guess I'll be contacting them to make sure I get this wire right. So we'll find out. Okay, you can hear the cars running. Temperature, it's showing 180 on the gauge. Now, I can tell you in the past that I ran this car, shut it off, and it just steamed over. But I want to show you some numbers. So I'm going to get out my little laser temperature sensor. If you look on this side of the radiator, there's 161 all the way in this left corner. Go to that side at the water neck, 149, 150, 151. I'm going to go behind the thermostat or behind on the intake manifold. 166, 168. Go ahead of that, and on the water neck, I'm reading 149, 150. Gonna go to the lower radiator water neck. That's 146, 130. That's actually pretty cool. 134, 133. So, readings, you can see 160 now up on this side. Now it is a cool day out, which is going to help. This isn't the middle of summer. So again, 164 on this side, 157 on that side. And I had that fan blowing towards it to blow the exhaust out, so that kind of may have helped them as well. I'm going to try to get the bottom of the radiator on this side, and you can see right there, it's 124, 123. So the heat isn't making it all the way over to this side like I had mentioned. You know, it's not passing it around. It's very cool on this corner versus this corner. I don't know if I can get to the other side or not. outside. So it's not surprising that lower left corner is relatively cold compared to the rest of it. Now it's hitting 168, 170 at the manifold. So interesting, you can see the temperatures all over the place. But either way, I'm changing this out because I can tell you for a fact, I've driven this car 4 or 5 miles, 6 miles, 8 miles, and I've stopped it and steam started coming out of it. So it definitely needs some help. I step back in the car. It's 190 based on what I can read there. Because the next big mark would be 200. So I'm going to guess it's about 190. And slowly climbing. So I've left it run a couple more minutes. Now look at this left top corner. 166, 167, 168, 165 up there on the right corner. Again, lower left. 140, 143. All the way in that corner though, it's 106 degrees. All the way over in the corner, 103. Pretty crazy. Water neck, 172. 154 on the front side. 170 on this side. Lower neck, 140, 143. Okay. All right, I have the radiator out, I have the fan blade off, and I did a test fit. And I will tell you, this is not a direct bolt in. Don't be thinking this is going to bolt right in and you're done. The problem is, if you look at this bottom tank, this is probably made to fit a variety of vehicles, but the Mustang has the lower bumper pads that kind of come around this area, and with this drop, those pads don't even touch. It's making contact here in the middle. There's a spot right there. You can see a little bit of black or something, but that's where it was making contact. So the width down here, the perches are way to the side, and that lower tank is making contact here in the middle. So just be aware of that. I am going to build something that's going to go right here in the middle. And I might use some light angle iron or sheet metal, heavy sheet metal, and bend something that I can have around this and maybe put some rubber pieces around it as well. The other conflict, this has this style of bracket that sits in these trough areas on the radiator. This doesn't fit. The radiator is wider than these. So I may try to modify this, spread these apart a little bit and see if I can't get them to go around that. But for now, that's not going to work either. Just letting you know. If you were hoping, I was hoping this would be, you know, basically a direct fit bolt in, but not going to happen. I think I found something that I can use. This is some scrap metal left over from some sort of toolbox or something. I have several pieces of this stuff, pretty heavy gauge. If I put the two pieces together, they'll fit around this with some room to play. So what I can do, just for having it look nice, I can index these to where these little notches line up, you know, square it up. Take this, one of these, whichever, and center that notch in the middle there and cut this off on either side between the fittings for the transmission cooler. And then, once I have those the same length, let's say, I can adjust the width however I need it in and out and weld it together. So that should be a pretty simple fix. I know not everybody's going to have scrap metal laying around like this, but that's what's going to work for me. And then I can take some pieces of rubber and put down inside of that. So I want to give you a visual reference of what I plan to do with those two pieces of metal down there. As I said before, I'm going to put the two pieces together to make a channel. And if I take one of these, well, if I take them both out and I show you, there's a hole in either one of those mount points for the rubber bushings, or rubber carriers, let's say. So I'm going to use those as a vertical mount hole. And if I look at what I have over here and I compare the radiator, the width on this section of the radiator is about 2 5/8 inches. And usable space, in my opinion, is about 6 inches. Basically, there's my center line, 3 inches on either side, which will put me out somewhere in here. So if I take one of these, and let's just say my arbitrary distance, I don't know where it is right now, on the side, I'd put a hole in the middle of that so I can mount it. What I'll have to do is cut away material so I end up with this midsection. Now, if you look at it like this, looking down on it, there would be a hole on each end, and looking at it from the front or back, these are your holes going through, and this is your midsection. Inside of that, what I will do, I think I'm going to add some of this foam tape. Now, I had used this foam tape on the window channels when I put this gaskets in the car, and this stuff is sticky on one side. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick, and so I can put that inside of the channel that I'm going to have, and that'll support the radiator to keep it from vibrating around. At least at this point, that'll take care of the bottom section. Let me get that put together and we'll have a look at it. Alright, so the plan is I'm going to trim off some material. As you see, I've already drilled the holes in the end where I want them, and I've notched out or drawn some notches or lines, let's say, where I want to notch out this material so that it will fit into the channel where the original radiator sat. To do that, I'm going to use this Yes Welder Cut 55 DS. I've used this before. I like it. It does a great job. Make sure you have your air supply connected and filtered. You want to make sure there's no moisture getting into your system. Definitely have some dark shaded glasses. And I wear hearing protection, and a lot of times I will wear a respirator, but today I'm just going to make some cuts. I've already ground off material on the other end here so I can clamp on the ground. Like butter. This one we have to cut a bit of a different shape, a little bit, because I have to remove some of this back flange here. Alright, shut that off. And I may not have made the straightest cut, you know, I just kind of free-handed it, but it worked. And what I'll do is take a sanding disc, clean that up a little more, get them a little better, a little more square. So, and I will be doing more cuts. I'm just using this as a baseline to get the thing kind of in the car and see how it fits. So here's what I've done. I've got the two pieces of metal in place, held by a 3/8 inch bolt in the holes that were already there in those two channels. And I also made a mistake. I pointed out that this thickness here is 2 5/8. It's not. It's 2 1/4. And what I wanted to do is get a representation of that. So I have this piece of scrap metal. And if I put that up against here, that basically mimics the width that I have for this tank. So with the brackets in place and up against each other, I can just drop that in and I have the clearance that I need. So this is going to work out really well. You know, just happen to have these pieces of metal. Now, what I have to do at this point, there's a couple things I need to do. One, you know, I could just clamp this together, take it out of here and weld it together, and I may just do that. But two, I also need to find where dead center is and indicate my 6-inch width or whatever I had between the fittings, and then cut off these other pieces of flange on the other side so they don't interfere. On the front side, it doesn't really matter. I may trim it just for aesthetics, but you know, it's got a lot of flange over here. I know it's hard to see this flange here, but it stops over here. But I think this is going to work out just right, and doing so the way I have, it actually drops. If you look straight down this panel, that flange is inside of this area where the radiator sits. So I think it's going to work. Okay, so I've bared the metal and I'm going to weld these two pieces together. I love welding heavy stuff like this. So now what I want to do is trim off here. As I indicated, this is the center line. So I want to come 6 inches on either side. Roughly I could go 5. You know, I could narrow it even a little more if I wanted to. It doesn't really matter. But I'm going to cut off these ears, go in these directions, so I'm left with just this centerpiece. I still think I might just cut off this excess over here just for appearance. So I need to measure that off and then I'll remove that piece as well. Okay, so let me tell you, I was a little concerned. I put my bracket down in the bottom. I put some foam tape on it. I wanted to test fit everything because I always, you know, say that you got to test fit this stuff. And what happened was, this is the cap that came on this new radiator. It's really pretty, looks nice, but it's really thick, really kind of tall. So the radiator with that cap on it would not allow the hood to close. That's how much space that cap took up. So this cap is from my old radiator. You know, it's the old regular style type of cap. And if I put this one on, you can just see how much taller that thing is in comparison. And just that much. I mean, I'm talking, I don't know, a little over 1/8 of an inch is all it took. So I think I'll be okay with the other cap. I would have liked to have used this one, but just keep it in mind if you're doing one of these. You know, you have to be able to clear the hood. I was concerned before with the height of the end of the tank there, but that clears the hood just fine. It's just this cap. So I have to use, you know, either this cap or a similar one in place of it. but I think it's still going to work. So I thought I was done, but I've decided to redesign my bracket. I talked about how it wasn't sitting low enough and it was causing problems, and I slept on it. You know, I talked about this before, where I put ideas in my head before I go to bed, and I kind of think about things. So I've been thinking this over all night in my sleep, and I've come up with another design. So let me show you what my plan is. Okay, now bear with me on this. I know it's hard to see this, but basically where the brackets are on the side here, there is this bracket and then this bracket, or the two pieces together. When you stack them up, that adds up to a good bit of thickness, so that in effect raises the platform. So if I use the piece that I made, it's going to sit up, and I'm losing space because I've doubled up the thickness here, plus I have these brackets that I have to deal with. So my new plan is I'm going to use the space between the brackets. So if I back this up a little bit and I show you, you've got this drop over here and this drop over here and this space in between. So in effect, I can put this all the way down and be below this part of the bracket. So how do I address that? Well, the width of the radiator on this lower tank to where it drops, you can see the side over here and that corner over here, that's 14.5 inches. So if I use my bracket that I made as a reference, and I kind of just eyeball it on where these holes are, right? I know I have a center point right here that I've already drawn. You probably can't see it, but it's right there. So center point, 14.5 inches. If I come in here and I go to 7.25, because that's halfway, now I have that much space on either end. And what I mean by that is, if I take a piece of metal, maybe not this piece, but another piece, and I put it on top of that bracket to make my mount hole, I can come anywhere in this area and weld it on. I can even bend it slightly, and that's going to allow this to sit below those two brackets. Anyway, you know, I'm trying to do this so that everybody can have an idea if they want to use one of these radiators. Yes, there's probably easier ways to do this, maybe a different radiator or whatever, but I'm going to try to show you how to use this one. So I'm going to build this thing, and rather than show you all the steps of the process, I'm just going to build it and then show you what it looks like when it's done. Well, I've made my version 2.0, let's say, and basically, again, I'm working with some scrap material here. I'm not worried about it being exact. I just needed to hold the radiator and look decent. So what I ended up doing was take one of those pieces that I had. Well, I took the two pieces and I separated them, because if you remember, I had them overlapped, and so that created some thickness. And then I made an extension on one side here because this wasn't long enough. I put this piece on top, so there's a bit of a joggle right there, and that let this sit down in like it should. And I think this is going to work. So I've added the foam to the inside. Another thing I did, I welded on this flange in the front as a stop to go against the front side of the radiator, or the back side, depending on how you look at it. And I still have to modify it a little right here. I realized that it ended up too close to that fitting for one of the tranny lines. Not that it's rubbing on it, but I want to have a little more clearance, so I'm going to cut that piece off. And you know, that's what I come up with. So if you're looking at doing one of these, you know, you might have to be creative and come up with your own design or something similar to this. Let's see what it looks like in the car. So here it is in the car, new bracket that I designed, and I want to show you the problem I have. Even though I can shut the hood, this cap is just, I mean, it's touching the hood. And to show you a comparison, if I can, this measurement I have is about an inch, I don't know, inch and a 1/16, somewhere in that range. And that cap is pretty tall. If I take that one off, this one is about 7/8 of an inch. So I would say 3/16 of an inch is pretty important. And I know I've already had the hood shut. I took a strap and put around the neck here and held onto it because it will move, and it doesn't hit anything. It's got good clearance. And I think that's going to work. So there's still more to do. You know, now that I have the lower bracket made, I will need to make the upper bracket. That'll come later. I'll make a video on that. And I need to swap out the water pump and figure out all that stuff. And of course the wiring and everything else. But I think that's going to work. Maybe not how it was intended, but it'll work. I thought I would show you this while I'm here. I will be able to use this bracket for the original radiator. What I did is I just took a sanding disc and I knocked down these fat sides of the rubber pieces, and I also just spread these open a little bit more. I stuck that end in a vise, rotated it, and just flared it just enough to where now, of course I have to align everything, but it's going to work. Good deal. So that'll be the end of this video. Now that I've made all this happen, there'll be more to come. I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.